So these are my spaghetti squash. They are about as wide as my hand and about as long as my hand, and my hands are pretty small. But these are spaghetti squash. They are a great replacement for spaghetti noodles. And we're gonna be using them in my low carb spaghetti. First thing to make our spaghetti squash, we're gonna wanna roast it. So I'm going to set my oven for 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I'm going to go over and prepare my spaghetti squash for roasting. Although I am not going to eat the outside of my spaghetti squash, I still want to rinse off the outside with cold, cool water. Warm water will work just fine. I like doing cool, but I'm just gonna rinse this off here. Make sure that I get every surface of the spaghetti squash, and then I'll prepare it for roasting. So I'm going to want to cut my spaghetti squash in half this way, and what you want to do is keep your hand above your knife and use your hand to press it down. Sometimes what you'll need to do if your spaghetti squash is a little hard is you're going to want to just press your knife into the spaghetti squash all the way and then slowly work your knife up, but make sure that you keep your hand up in the middle of the knife so you don't poke yourself with the pointy end. If you have this cracked pretty good, you can pull it apart with your hands, and the inside looks somewhat like a cross between a cantaloupe and a pumpkin. We're gonna scoop out these inside guts, and just the inside, just the part that looks really stringy, that's the part that we are going to scoop out. So just about anything will work for your scooper. I like to use an ice cream scoop because it is hard on the edges. You can use a regular spoon, but I just go ahead and take my ice cream scooper and pull towards me and scoop down all the way in there and then pull out. And with the stringy parts, you may need to hold on to the strings so you make sure that you get all of the guts out, but these guts you can just throw away. Now you'll know that you're done when all of your seeds are out. You can repurpose these seeds. They kind of look like pumpkin seeds, but you can repurpose those seeds to maybe roast them. They taste a lot like pumpkin seeds. You can eat those, but I would not eat the stringy parts that are attached to the seeds. The next thing that you're gonna do is to line a baking sheet with aluminum foil, and then you're going to put your halves onto the baking sheet, and then you're going to take some olive oil, and you can use your fingers however you want to do it. I just put a nice amount in each half, probably about 2 tablespoons. And then what you are going to want to do is either get a brush or your fingers and just rub that olive oil all the way around the halves. And I'm rubbing it in the hollow part of the spaghetti squash, as well as on top around the rind of the spaghetti squash. I'm not gonna rub the olive oil on the outside because, again, we're not using the outside rind. We're just rubbing it into the hollow space of the spaghetti squash where we took what I like to call the guts out, and on top of the rind. We're going to do that with each half. And then I like to take salt and pepper, as well as some garlic salt or garlic powder, depending on what you like, and season the core of the spaghetti squash, or the hollowed out part, and the rind. It just gives it some nice flavor to where I don't have to flavor it later. So like I said, what I'm going to do is just season this with some salt and some pepper around the rind, as well as in the hollowed out portions. You can use any kind of seasoning that you like. I like using just salt and pepper and maybe a little bit of garlic salt or garlic powder. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to flip these over onto the baking sheet. So once your oven is at 400 degrees, you can go ahead and put it into your oven. And I just have my rack on the middle rack, but you can move it up or down depending on how you feel your spaghetti squash is cooking. But we're gonna go ahead and put that into the oven for 30 to 45 minutes. So next, in creating our spaghetti squash spaghetti, we are going to have some meat sauce. And this is my meat sauce. You can recreate it however you'd like, but I'm going to take 2 pounds of beef. This is enough for all of my spaghetti squashes, so I had 2 full spaghetti squashes. I like extra meat in my meat sauce, so this is 2 pounds. And then I have all of these seasonings over here. I have onion powder, garlic powder, Italian seasoning, and basil. So once you have broken up your ground beef into your bowl, you're going to add your Italian seasoning. I don't measure. I'm kind of like Rachel Ray that way. But if I was to say how much Italian seasoning, I would probably say 1 to 2 tablespoons. And then onion powder, probably 1 tablespoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, and then just a little bit of basil. It's already in that Italian seasoning. I would say 1 tablespoon of that as well. I think basil goes very well with tomatoes, and so that's why we are doing that. Next thing that you are going to do is roll up your sleeves and mash it all together. You can stir it, but the seasonings don't get broken up as well into the ground beef, and it also gives you an opportunity to break the ground beef up into as big or as little of chunks as you desire. Once you have seasoned your ground beef, you can throw it into a skillet. The skillet does not need any oil in it. Turn it on high or medium. I'm actually going to turn mine on to medium, probably about a 7, and then I'm going to throw my ground beef into this skillet. So we're going to leave that until I hear a nice sizzle. And when I go to flip my hamburger, we are just going to flip it in its same space. You can stir it, but I find it easier just to flip it where it is. See that nice brown color? That's what you want all the way through the hamburger. This nice brown meat. While the hamburger was cooking, I minced some garlic. Again, I said I love garlic, so I minced some garlic. If you are looking for the garlic video, go to the mashed potato recipe with kids, and they show you exactly how to mince and use garlic. And then I have some cherry tomatoes. I'm gonna have a few more, but I'm going to use half of my pail here of cherry tomatoes. This just gives it a little bit of texture in the sauce. Once you're ready, you can go ahead and pour your cherry tomatoes and your garlic into your saucepan. You're going to then mix it in before you pour your sauce. Maybe in a future video, I'll teach you how to make a tomato sauce, but for today, I'm gonna just use a canned sauce. As I said, this is a low carb sauce, so I am using a no sugar added sauce that I found, and I'm gonna go ahead and pour the entire jar into my skillet. Once I pour all of this in, I'm gonna then return it to the heat and mix it all up. I'm going to put this on low and let it simmer, and it's going to bubble here for just a little bit, but I'm going to let it simmer for about 10 minutes. Alright, so our spaghetti squash is done. I am flipping these over currently from the aluminum foil with some tongs, and you know that they're done because they have these nice brown marks on the outside. And you can also take your tongs and slide them down, and look at how nicely it just peels off. That's what you want your spaghetti squash to look like when it's done. See, I can just already take this and just roll my tongs through the spaghetti squash and pull me out some nice, beautiful squash pieces. Now you can choose to let your spaghetti squash cool down, but I like taking 2 forks and peeling this spaghetti squash down, and you're gonna go all the way until you hit the skin on the other side. But I'm going to use one hand as my other is holding my phone to videotape. You're gonna just pull this all the way to the middle, and when you get to the middle you can scoop up to get that spaghetti squash out. I love this recipe because I can use this as one of my meal preps, and my regiment, I can do 1 cup of vegetables, which in this case my vegetable is my spaghetti squash, and 1/2 of a spaghetti squash is 2 1-cup servings that I can use. So in all 4 of those, that makes 8 servings of spaghetti squash spaghetti for me. Okay, so here is my cup of spaghetti squash. Each half has 2 of these, so I can have 8 servings because that's my regimen. So I'm gonna put my cup of spaghetti squash in there, and then I'm going to put my sauce. I can have 2 scoops of my sauce, and I like to smash my spaghetti squash with my sauce spoon, and that is one of my meals. And I like to put a Jello cup, a sugar-free Jello cup in here, or something else to add on to my perfectly good meal.